Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey at the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China, and I got another question from our friend Talent Dance TV. He asks me, Ramsey, how does it feel to be living your dream job? At least I presume it's your dream job, and to be able to spend your time doing what you love and what you're passionate about. And if it's your first time stopping by the channel, hi, I'm Ramsey, I'm a coach. I coach the sport of mixed martial arts. And that's what I do. I was a professional fighter for about 10 years. I fought in the sports of MMA, American kickboxing, Muay Thai, Sanda, and K1 kickboxing. And about 5 years ago, I retired due to an injury, compound skull fractures, and now I coach full-time and I do private training, fitness training as well. But my emphasis is teach fighters to win fights. Okay, so the short answer to your question is it feels great to do what I love to do. Okay, but your question really got me thinking about the things that I've been passionate about over the years and the things I've wanted to do over the years. See, I remember the first thing that I can remember wanting to do when I grew up was to be an artist. Because I was born with this talent, the ability to draw really well, at least to draw dragons and animals and fantasy creatures, things like that, really well. And I just always seemed to have this talent. And everybody would always say, Ramsey, you're going to be an artist when you grow up. And I would just nod, yeah, I guess I am. And as I grew older and I started to learn the way the world works, people just don't hand you a living, generally speaking, because you can draw a cool looking picture. You've got to have other talents. My older brother, he's a much better businessman than I am, and I've learned a lot from him. He always says, artists are very interesting people because they're really good at that one thing. They're really good at their art, but generally speaking, they're terrible businessmen. Okay? And that was my life for a long time, being a terrible businessman, but having a feeling like I had a gift, something to share, an art. And that art, I've expanded that largely from what used to be a simple pen and paper drawings. I remember when I was about to finish high school, I had a certain teacher that inspired me a lot, a band teacher, a guy named Evan Lee, and he was fantastic. Now, I went into high school band without any experience at all. I just really wanted to play an instrument. I didn't play anything. And the only instrument that was really available at the time for rent from the school was a bass clarinet. So I said, okay, if that means I got to be in the band, I'll learn how to play that. So I struggled, but I taught myself to read music. I taught myself how to play the bass clarinet, one of the most obscure, overlooked instruments in the whole symphonic band. But, I got pretty good at it. I got a good handle on it. I learned some other instruments. I taught myself to play the saxophone, the French horn, the trumpet, and a few others. And I got really inspired by my band teacher. And I thought, I want to be a teacher like him. I want to teach people. I want to inspire people. Okay. I want to be a band teacher. That's what I thought. I want to be a high school music teacher. And I was really passionate about that going out of high school. So I got into college, and at Brigham Young University where I went, the music major was cutthroat. It was extremely competitive. I did not know this going in. Okay, so I had just come from a couple of years of self-taught music experience. And I remember signing up for a music theory class, basic introductory to music theory, college level, knowing absolutely nothing about music theory, because again, this is not something that was taught in my high school. I grew up in a very small town. We were lucky to have band. And I failed. I failed the class. And that was a hard failure. I mean, I did my homework. I tried. I mean, this was the first time in my life where I gave it 100% effort. And I still failed. And this was shocking. I'd always been taught that if you give 100%, if you do your best, you'll always succeed. You'll always come out ahead in the end. And the fascinating thing about that is it's not actually true. It is entirely possible to do your best, to give 100% and still fail. And yes, it's very important to understand those failures are also learning opportunities. And I got to tell you, I've failed so many times and I've learned so many things. And if you want to get good at something, take jiu-jitsu for example, tap out 1,000,000 times and learn 1,000,000 things. So I didn't get accepted to the music major. I tried again and I failed again and man, I realized I have to do something else. I have to. So, I went along studying Spanish, which is something I had an aptitude for. And one day, I saw a dance performance, a modern dance performance, and this again really inspired me. In a very similar way that my high school music teacher had inspired me, but this was different. It wasn't a person, it was an idea, it was a concept, it was the art itself that inspired me. I saw this piece and I can't really tell you what it was about, but I felt like it was a very profound message about life and death and purpose and meaning, and it hit me very profoundly, and I felt like I need, I don't just want, I need to do something that can inspire. I need to do something that can teach. I need to do something that can show people how to feel like this. I need this light, this energy. And I need to share that somehow. And so for a long time I felt like my calling, my passion in life was dance, modern dance, that thing that inspired me so much. That thing that taught me something about the human spirit that I didn't know, that I'd never felt before. And I buckled down and I worked harder than I ever had before. And again, it's a very cutthroat program at Brigham Young University, the dance program, super competitive. But man, I tried harder than I'd ever tried before. And somehow I made it. Somehow I made it in there. I even got to the point where I danced professionally, but the thing is, there's no point where you make it, especially in dance. Because again, dancers tend to have short-lived careers as performers. And if you want to have longevity in it, you need to go into the pedagogical end, the teaching, the choreography, the artistic direction, and so on. And I enjoy that stuff, but at the same time, performing is that thing that made me feel that light, that passion. And again, if you know my story, if you don't, I'll tell you anyway. I was struggling financially. Oh man, it was hard. It was so hard. It still is, guys. It still is. Man, the struggle, in so many ways, no matter how easy it gets, it's always a struggle. Because if it's not, you're doing something wrong. So I started to fight. Started to do prize fighting to earn an extra paycheck. And, initially I wouldn't say I was any good at it. I don't think I had a talent for it. What I had was an aptitude to take punishment and then to do it again. I was willing to get in there and be a punching bag so I could collect a paycheck, so I could break even at the end of the day. And over time, I was shown the way to pull myself up from the bootstraps, if you will, to learn how to learn. And I started getting serious about winning fights, not just showing up for fights, but winning fights. Whole different thing, whole different concept. And I started to get passionate about that. I've seen so many fights. I watched hundreds, probably about 400 amateur fights in my 20s, MMA fights, and I noticed something. I noticed some tendencies. I noticed some patterns. Things started coming together in my head as I was watching, and I realized, wait a minute, everybody's missing out on this thing. If they would capitalize on this position, then. If they would fix this thing here, then. They could win it. And I started implementing those strategies. I opened up my own gym. Just a small gym behind my house. I put down some mats, hung up some heavy bags, and put up an ad on Craigslist saying, hey, come train with me for free. So I just wanted some people to train with. I got a group together, and every day, 4 hours a day, we would train. We'd pour through technique books and look over videos and figure stuff out. And it's a long, arduous path of trial and error trying to do it that way, but you have to do what you have to do sometimes. Okay. Not everybody has the good fortune of having, the ideal mentor right there next to them, holding their hand, guiding them through it. And every technique I learned, every ounce of athleticism, every bit of value in my system, in my martial art, I had to work for it. I had to struggle for it. I had to fight for it. And I still do. Every single day. Every single day. There's never, ever a point where you arrive in this sport, in this profession. And that is one of the reasons I'm passionate about it. Because it's a path. It's not the end game. It's not a destination. It's a path. I like the Eastern concept of the Do or the Dao. Dao in Chinese means way or path or road, and Do in Japanese, Korean, same thing. So often when they speak of a martial art, they'll use that word Do, Judo, Karate Do, and so on. A way, a path, right? It's not the end. It's not a finish line. It's not a big trophy or a reward. Okay? It's a path. And we never stop being on that path unless we stop. So, how does it feel doing what I love to do? Short answer, feels good. But it feels like everything, because it is everything. It's so many different things. I mean, I'm a coach. I hold mitts for people. I teach people how to grapple. I roll with people. I wrestle with people. I spar with people. I show them where to put their hands and their feet when they're lifting weights, that sort of thing. But, if all I ever teach my students, if all I ever teach you is where to put your hands and feet, how to armbar an opponent, how to punch somebody in the face, right? How to get physically stronger. If that's all I ever teach you, then I believe I have failed. Because what I'm passionate about is something more than that, something deeper than that. Again, going back to that dance performance that I saw, where I felt light, right? I felt my soul light up in a very unique way that made me want to live my life differently, better, that made me want to give back in a way that I never had before. That's what drives me. I've got 2 children, 4-year-old and almost 2-year-old. And they're fantastic. And I love them. And they're awesome. And my life revolves around them. And they remind me every day of that light that I felt. And when I see them, when I'm able to teach or inspire them, I feel that. And it's not just them. I love all of my students. I love them. I like them all, right? I'm going to tell you a story about my assistant coach, John. Before I met him, I would often, during the warm-up of the group classes, say, all right, guys, we're going to do 10,000 push-ups, go! Just as a joke, and start dropping and doing a bunch of push-ups, and they'd all kind of stop and laugh, ha, that's funny, nobody can do 10,000 push-ups. But then John Jung, this Chinese guy, he came to my class for the first time. When I said, all right, guys, 10,000 push-ups, you know what he did? Well, everybody else was just kind of, whatever, it's a joke. Dropped to the floor and started doing push-ups, and he did not stop until I asked him to. Now, I like all my students, but man, the ones who do that, those ones, it is impossible not to love those guys. So, I love it when my students get in there and they compete, and when they win, and sometimes they don't, and that's fine, right? As long as they learn their lesson, as long as they show respect, as long as that helps them on the path. Winning a fight, that's not the end, that's not the destination. Winning a bunch of fights, that's not the end, that's not the destination. Being the champion of the world is not the end, it is not the destination. I remember, last year? About 6 of my students, they went over for a boxing competition at another gym, a boxing gym. We're a MMA gym. We don't focus specifically on boxing, but rather all aspects of hand-to-hand combat. And my students surprised me because every last one of those 6 won their match. And it wasn't so much that brought me to tears in the locker room afterward. But I started bawling like a baby, tears streaming down my face because of the way they looked at me. Because it wasn't like, oh yay, a win for the good guys. You know, it was thank you for inspiring me. And that is humbling. It floored me. Absolutely floored me. I didn't know how to handle that. Right? What impressed me even more about these guys, every single one of them used the one technique that I personally used to finish each and every one of my professional fights, whether it was MMA, K1, Muay Thai, Sanda. And that technique is very simple. You approach your opponent, put your arms around them, hug them, and say thank you. And I saw that 6 times. 6 times that night for my students. And that made me happy. That brought me some joy. That filled me with light. Because I knew that no matter how they finished those matches, whether they ended up with their hands raised in victory or not, they would have finished it the same way. They would have finished it the exact same way. And that's inspiring to me. So, man, I've worked a lot of lousy jobs. I've worked a factory job I hated, long hours, graveyard shifts. I've worked, fast food. I've worked retail. I've worked all these crappy minimum wage jobs that just made me not want to wake up in the morning and think, what am I doing with my life? I'm a college educated man and I'm flipping burgers. I'm doing quality control on a conveyor belt in a factory. I'm lifting stuff and lugging it around from one end of the room to the other. Driving a truck around and parking it. Washing windows. Man, I took every job I could get, and there's nothing wrong with that, guys. Right? We have to do what we have to do to get by. You have to do what you have to do to feed your family. Put a roof over their head. Clothes on their back. There's no shame in that. And we live in a world where not everybody gets their dream job, man. Take a look out the window here in the People's Republic of China, man. Most people work in factory conditions far worse than anything I ever saw in that job I hated. And there was a young man, Chinese guy from Shandong province. That's north of Shanghai. It's roughly the equivalent of, say, Los Angeles to North Dakota. This guy went by the English name Bruce Lee. Yeah, he did that. He went by the name Bruce Lee, and he looked the part. I mean, the guy was ripped. He had muscle striations on top of muscle striations. And he heard about me. I don't know how. I think he saw my website. And he got on his bicycle, his little push bike. And he rode for 5 days straight, night and day, from Shandong province all the way to Shanghai, because he wanted to train with me. And when I learned that, when he came to me, when he told me that, man, that was humbling. Man, that was so humbling. Back in the States, when I was running this little gym, my competition, if you will. I mean, we're talking like Jeremy Horn's Elite Performance, one of the best gyms in the world, one of the best coaches in the US. You know, there were black belts on every corner within spitting distance of each other. You know, people came from these vast wrestling pedigrees. And then there was me, this guy struggling, trying to figure it all out for myself. And a few years later, when I moved to China, and you know, there was a dearth of information about fighting here. And that surprises a lot of people because they think, well, hey, didn't fighting come from China? Didn't they invent Kung Fu? Well, yeah, hundreds of years ago, sure, but today, nobody does that anymore. Except a few random old people, you know, in the park, they wake up and practice their forms, but they're dying out, and the young people are not filling their shoes. They're not picking up the slack there. And so mixed martial arts, I mean, combat sports in general, especially the grappling arts, are so new here. It's a baby. Today, compared to 8 years ago, it's a whole different thing. I mean, now there are legitimate MMA gyms. There are a few black belts here in jiu-jitsu. There are some legitimate competitions here. But still, I mean, it's like the US 20 years ago in a lot of ways. So, and that humbled me when Bruce Lee came to me saying, teach me, please. Teach me. I want to compete. I want to learn mixed martial arts. You know, back in the day when nobody here knew what it was and just trying to find a fight. Man, that was a chore. But watching this guy train, man, that inspired me. See, I set out on this mission to inspire other people, to help other people feel that light that I felt. But the opposite happened. As I went out there trying to touch hearts and lift spirits, they did it to me. They gave back to me. And that's humbling. So my dream job, man, it's a humbling endeavor every day. Every time somebody comes to me and says, teach me, please. It's this existential dilemma. What do I really know? What do I really have to offer? And at the same time, we have to temper that humility with confidence, with the absolute confidence that you know how to win a fight, and you know how to coach somebody to win a fight. And that regardless of the circumstances, you can rise above them. And that if we give 100% and still fail, that like the old song says, like the good and great in story, if we fail with glory. Be that song again repeated, never despairing though defeated. Like the great and good in story, if we fail with glory. But I didn't show up to work today to fail, guys. And you didn't stop by here to fail either. So, with that said, thank you for watching. Get out there and train.